Here has published a game at all. Like, sweet. Who's published a mobile game? All right, cool. Who in here are Unity people? All right, very good. Any Godot people in here? Look at that. Really? That's awesome. I did not expect that. Fantastic.
How many people are Godot after the
That's right. Yeah. Who was a Godot person like 3 months ago? About the same. Because this happened.
I mean, if you want to say 5 years ago, it might be the only hand that goes up.
Are you really?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So yeah, this whole thing happened in September. One thing about this, these gals look like they can be twins. You know what I mean? There's really not much. I think the guy just likes, red or something like that. This one, that's a little cruel, but she looks like she's so serene and just like enjoying this. But so who am I? I don't know. I'm Terrence Boyce. Sometimes I go by Squid Ink online. Wowium's the kind of company name. Multidisciplinary designer. Started back in like the mid '90s doing print design. Started doing some early web design. Started working at a sign shop. Then I worked at an architectural firm. Then I worked at an ad agency. I worked at another ad agency. Then I moved out to California and I worked at a tech company doing multimedia stuff. Flash design, if you remember Flash. Yes, that was macrame. And then came back here and started doing television work and done some movie stuff, motion graphics, some special effects, that sort of thing. And I'm currently been with the local CBS affiliate for 18 years, seems like. Work on all kinds of stuff. It might be vehicle graphics, or it might be augmented reality presentations and stuff like that. So all kinds of graphics stuff. I've got 2 published games. They're both on both of the app stores. My first console was Atari 2600. I don't know if Commodore 64 counts as a console, but we used to play on that too back in the day. But NES was really my jam, so the original. I'm an original Nintendo guy. My game dev experience. 2007, the iPhone, the iPod Touch, I was kind of in love with it. I had an iPod Touch. It was very exciting, and I attempted some iOS development, and it didn't go very well because I'm not really a programmer, and Objective-C basically broke my brain. And it's hard. I like do Hello World in Objective-C, and it's like 2 or 3 lines. I was like, does it have to be all that? But anyway, there wasn't a community at all back then that I could find of people who were doing mobile development. Certainly not game development. Certainly not locally. I don't know if there was a meetup of any kind going on back then, but I couldn't find people to talk to about this stuff. I was into it. I was ready to do it. I had ideas, things I wanted to do, couldn't do them. I had a book like this thick. I think I made a calculator. I think it didn't work. But I mean, so it was really hard, and I kind of backed out of it because I could not do what I wanted to do. And then the iPad came out, and I'm like, damn it, that's even cooler. So, I really saw it early on as like, this is like such a nice little gaming device. And then around 2014, I found out about Unity, and I really jumped on that and saw that you could actually export and publish on your own. You could do that. And I'm all over this. And so I took some courses in Unity and cranked out a game for iOS and Android, and it is a cute little game. Buggy Boo Friends memory match, right? So I wanted something that was simple, something that was not going to be super complicated. How about a little classic game of, what is it called? Pixesso, it's called Pairs, it's called the memory game. It's got so many names anyway. Going through that whole process, I learned a whole hell of a lot about designing a game and getting it published. And that was really the goal. I wasn't in it to make any kind of money or anything. I did put in, I think Unity ads at the time, or AdMob, I can't remember what it was, just for the hell of it. Didn't make any money off of it. I mean, this is the sort of thing that wasn't really gonna, it's not exactly gonna blow up, you know. But I did learn quite a bit. Like monetization is really important. Like if you're gonna spend a year, maybe 2 years of your life working on something, maybe set it up so you can make some money off of it. It's a good idea to do that. I didn't really do that. I wasn't really concerned. I wanted to work on something and just as a goal, you know. But just because you build it, it doesn't mean they'll come. By the time I published that thing in 2015, I don't know how many apps and games were on the App Store, but it was just, you know, it's a drop in a bucket. It's more like a drop in a rainstorm, you know. Like nobody's just going to find your game, you know, on the App Store. It was just overrun with a lot of crap too. You know, it's people were spamming the App Store with all kinds of junk. You know, they take the same game and they put it out 12 different ways with a bunch of crappy artwork and everything. It was a hot mess, but it's gotten a little bit better, but it's also maybe worse in some ways. You know, some things I learned about marketing with mobile games, and this I think applies today pretty much. You want to make it something that is so fun or funny that it's very shareable. And I don't just mean like socially shareable. I mean like it's something that you feel confident in putting money into advertising for. You know, like if it's a dinky little plinky game, you're not going to like pay to advertise that because nobody wants to see that. It's not going to like generate any traffic, right? Let's go back. Hello. Or if it's a niche genre that has a steady supply of people searching for that sort of thing, you have a good chance of catching some eyes, you know, especially, you know, the more niche it is. You don't have to advertise as much for something like that. If you do your search terms right and you get your App Store optimization fairly decent, then you've got a good chance of making some money. And then back around the time that I pushed that game out, a certain female pushed a baby out. It was my baby too. And so as my son Fox was growing up, when he was a toddler, we started playing games pretty early, like a lot of tablet games. There's a ton of stuff out there for little kids, even back then. And I learned a lot about what to do and what not to do if you're making a game for toddlers. They're very different. You know, they can't read, for one. So having words throughout your game, if you're marketing to toddlers, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We'll get into all of that stuff at some point here soon. But also around 2019, I heard about Godot, and I thought, well, that's cool. I'm not sure if I downloaded it. I remember looking into it a little bit at the time, and I was like, well, that looks pretty neat. Maybe I'll try it sometime. I don't feel a belch coming on. So far, so good. And then I get the itch. No, not that kind of itch. I wanted to make a tablet game using what I'd learned from raising a toddler. And I knew it needed to be cute, fun, funny. They really like surprises, things that are hidden. It can be really super simple, but when they find something, they feel like they've really accomplished something. It really encourages them to play more, and they just feel a confidence boost and everything. It needs to be super simple interfaces. I've seen so many bad interfaces that are meant for little kids. It's insane. Somewhat educational, but not academic. I don't really feel like at the time making an educational game per se, but I wanted them to be able to learn something. You know, cause and effect's a big thing if you're talking about a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old even. Just simple sounds and interactions. Big, fat, juicy hitboxes, because their little fingers are chunky and they don't have like the best aim in the world, you know what I mean? So like, you don't want to have like super little detailed places where they're supposed to tap because they're not going to hit that. And you also need a parental gate for settings and purchases. So we'll get into parental gates here in a bit. So as I said, making some money would be nice. What are my options for monetization with a game for toddlers? Well, ads are absolute just nightmares and just terrible for little kids, man. They don't understand what advertising is. So when you interrupt their game with this thing that pops up, they have no idea what's going on. You know, they think it is the game, you know, and they get very confused, and you have to explain to them, you have to explain to a 2-year-old what advertising is, right? And that's fun. So no, there's no way I was going to do ads in a game. Also, you know, back to that earlier slide when I was talking about things that I learned from that first game, if you don't have the volume of downloads, then there's no point in having ads in your game anyway, because you're not going to make a dime off of it. I didn't want to do subscriptions. That was starting to become popular, but I didn't want to do that. I mean, if you do subscriptions, then you have to like have more content like on a regular basis, which means like more work. Who wants to do that? It could be a paid game, you know, just pay and play and you're done, right? I don't know. As a parent with a toddler, you end up like downloading a handful of games at a time. Like, well, that looks okay. Well, what do you think? Does that look good? Yeah, you know, this has got, I don't know, trucks in it. Likes trucks, right? So you download 5 truck games and like, you know, 3 of them are terrible, 2 of them are okay. So rarely do you just outright buy a game without knowing anything, because you could pull it down and your kid hates it, and then you just wasted $3 or $5 or whatever. So freemium was the way to go with toddlers. From my own experience, like I don't know how many times either I'd be sitting with my son looking at a game, and you'd have you know, maybe 1/5 of the game is free to play, and then the rest is locked, and you get a feel, the kid gets a feel for it, they seem to be enjoying it, they're having a good time, and they want to do the rest of it, and you're like, let's do it, you know, let's roll, you know, you're having a good time, so let's do it. So I felt like that would be the way to go. So, you know, have a few free scenes, pay to unlock the rest through in-app purchases. So what sort of game should I do? What do toddlers like? Well, cars and trucks, some toddlers like that. For dinosaurs, oh yeah, that's big. Shapes, it's a little too basic. You know, I think I'd get bored real quick making a shape game. Animals, hey, wait a second. Totally animals, let's do animals. So there are a few games that my kid really liked at the time. Just kept going back to them. I thought it was just hilarious. And I liked them too, because, you know, I'm being critical of these games, you know, like every time he's playing, I'm secretly like, you know, calculating in my head, like what works and what doesn't. No matter how like generic or cheesy the artwork is, you know, like something like this, which is like, oh, are you like seriously? But he really loved this game. Like, this thing is so crazy. Like, each of these is a big scene, and it's got these, you know, dinky plinky artworks, and you tap it and it does a little funny thing and it makes a noise, but the whole time he's like learning things, because I'm telling him what these animals' names are, and he starts to memorize these things. He memorizes what their names are, the types of sounds they make, the environments they live in, and, you know, by the time he's 3, he knows the difference between Arctic and Antarctic, right? That's not bad. So that's kind of what I decided to do. There's another one right here that's kind of in the same ballpark. You know, so very similar stuff. You got like a farm scene, you got a this scene and a that scene, and lots of little cute things happen. So I was like, you know what, this is what I'm gonna do. I think I can do a better job. So these are little videos for those games that we don't sit here and watch those. So I need a basic outline. If you're making a game, you got to make an outline first, right? You need a full-on design doc, but this was just me working with myself, so I didn't really go all that far. But I wanted 6 scenes, different environments, like forest, savanna, farm, ocean, whatnot. I want at least 6 animals to interact with. This has got to seem worth it, especially if I'm going to do in-app purchases. You can't have just a couple of things that you're going to unlock with your hard-earned cash. Of course, touching an animal results in some simple animation and related sounds. Easy navigation. I wanted the navigation to be such that you could hand it over to a 3-year-old and they could play the whole thing. They can get into it, fire it up, get in there and do what they want to do. They could back up, go to different scenes. They can handle it, So you can't have lots of text. You can't have drop-down menus and stuff like that. It's got to be super, super duper easy. Of course, a few scenes are free. I pay to unlock the others. And do I want to use Unity for this? Big question back then. I'd used Unity for that memory match game. That worked out all right. But what if I tried Godot? This is the real Godot had in 2019. I checked this out. I was curious, like, what are people making? And I saw this, I'm like, that's damn cute. Love that, right? Okay, pixelated stuff. Yeah. So, you get a feel for what it can do. Now that's nice. Look at that. That's pretty impressive. Like, look at the smoke effects. We got like particle generators and stuff going on. Ooh, nice lighting. Yeah, look at that. The depth of field. I like that. So, watching through this thing, I'm like, this is pretty impressive for a free game engine. I felt like I should at least download this thing and give it a go. That looks like fun. So I think that at the time, my primary concerns were, can it build for other platforms? Of course, like, why am I going to spend time doing this if I can't even publish it, right? Looked into it, yeah, you could. That didn't appear to be a problem. The documents say you can. They've got modules for it. Some of the stuff is built into it. So, can it do in-app purchases for both platforms? That seemed like, the docs say you could. And I could not actually test that out easily. So I felt like I was rolling the dice a little bit there. It's very important that it worked. And the documentation was good. I gotta say, I was impressed with the documentation at the time. It said it could do these things. And of course, I'm searching around and like, I'm doing Google searches for like Godot sucks, and I'm like, what is it that people hate about Godot, and I didn't find anything that really steered me clear of it. And I mean, in the end, it seemed pretty stable. The reviews pretty good. People liked it. There's a learning curve coming from Unity. But I did find some tutorials out there, and I think at the time I may have found a course here or there. I was a little worried about what am I going to do if I get stumped? Is there a community? It seemed like there was a little bit of one. A lot of it was not in English, but that's okay. You've got Google Translate, and you can kind of hash things out. So I was wondering what programming languages you use. I don't know. So I had to look into these things. And why would I leave Unity anyway? Now remember, it was 2020, okay? This wasn't like September. I never really liked Unity's interface, honestly. It totally works, it's fine, I get it. You can get around, you can make stuff, it's fine. Everything is kind of where it should be, it's all right, whatever. But it's not like, it's kind of like, you go and you're shopping for a car or something, you sit in like 5 different cars and you sit in like 4 of them, you're like, yeah, it's all right, it has all the things, but it doesn't really feel right. And then you put your butt in one seat in another car and you're like, oh, wow. You know what I mean? It just feels right. That's kind of how I ended up with Godot. But I never felt that way with Unity, and it was always super bloated. I always felt like there was like, I don't know, 80% of this thing I'm not using and I'm not going to need. Of course, there's a splash screen situation. You know, you always got to have Unity splash screen, which we were kind of proud of back then. You didn't mind doing that, you know. It's like, yeah, I made it. I used it in Unity. I know Unity. Right. The external, the whole mono thing back then, I was never really into that. It's like, why do I have to hop out of Unity just to write like a tiny bit of code? This is like not ideal. And I was just going to make a simple 2D game, right? So I felt like, well, I can do that in something else. So I did a test. Godot won my heart. And what I liked about Godot was that the interface, I just love the interface in Godot. I think part of it's that it's like defaults to a sort of dark mode, and it's very pleasant to the eyes, and I like the layout. It's tiny. I mean, compared to Unity, it's tiny. You don't have to deal with the splash screen. It's internal script editor, right? You don't have to go anywhere else to like write a tiny bit of code. And GD script's really cool. It's Python-esque. If you like Python, it's modern. It's cool. But it does support other languages. I really like the animation editor in Godot, and that's kind of half of what I do for a living ends up being working in a timeline somewhere. And so if I'm in a timeline in a game engine and everything feels familiar to me, of course that's going to be tugged on my heartstrings. The whole node system made sense to me. Like, we'll get into nodes here in a sec for those who don't know what that is. But that's basically the equivalent of game objects in Unity. And Godot's about as free gets. You know, you can, if you want to modify it and then compile it, have your own version that does a special thing, you can do that. So speaking of differences between Unity and Godot, like I found this little graphic and I thought it was kind of interesting that so many of these things are identical, right? Like the primary differences are the whole game object versus node thing and the prefabs. So you don't really have prefabs per se in Godot, but you have something that's kind of similar, which is basically like a nested scene or a packed scene as they put in here. But like, look, I mean, rigid body. Hey, a shader's a shader, a collider's a collision shape, close enough. So seeing the things that were so similar and then having a good test, that made me feel pretty confident. I was gonna try Godot. I was gonna do that. So COVID hit and things got really crazy, but I was working from home all of a sudden, so I had plenty of time to get good. So I started down this journey. I need some assets. I'm going to need background artwork. I'm going to need animals. I'm going to need sounds. Going to have UI stuff. Where am I going to get all this stuff? Am I going to just make it? Kidding. So freepik.com is really cool. I do recommend that. I got a whole lot of stuff from freepik.com, and I paid. You know, it was a premium thing. If you're paying for a premium subscription, freepik.com, you can make whatever you want with any of this stuff. You know, and you can sell it. What you can't sell is just sell the artwork. You know, you don't resell it. But if you want to make T-shirts out of this stuff and then sell the T-shirts, you're good to go. Indefinitely. It's not like that ends when your subscription ends, right? So it was great. You know, I would search for whatever environment and animals I was needing, and I'd find lots to choose from, and most of the time it'd be vector art, which is exactly what I wanted. Where am I going to get sounds? Free sound of whatever animal. Enter, you know. The freesound.org, it was pretty good, right? Amongst others. I found a number of different places where you can get free sounds. Not a big deal. And sometimes I'd end up on YouTube if I'm looking for, like, you know, deer make like the worst sound in the universe. By the way, they're super duper cute, and then they go, like, oh my God. Trying to find a good deer noise was really hard, but I remember like I'd end up on like YouTube and someone would have like deer call city, you know, it would be like 50 minutes of deer calls, you know, and I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna snag this one way over here It only lasts like a second and a half. I don't think anybody's ever going to come after me for doing that. But free sounds pretty good. It's time to get cracking. So all I got to do is pick a scene. I can always change the order of scenes later. I would mock up the animals in an environment in Illustrator and I'd try to make it cute and clever, you know, like make it seems like they're doing a thing, you know. Not just slap them on like one of these earlier examples, you know, just it really just like laid this clip art down on top of a generic, you know, cheesy background. And then I would create a layered Photoshop file with the cut up animal parts, and that's, you know, I'm looking at that point, I'm looking at what am I going to be animating, right? So I'm like cutting out little arms and heads and, you know, getting rid of the eyes because I'm going to have them blink because they got to have some kind of like default idle state, right? And one of the easiest things to do is just have the eyes blink and suddenly it's like the whole thing's alive. Oh my gosh. So, and you know, of course, get a naming convention going for all the layers, and then I would export the layers and run it through a program called Texture Packer. Anybody heard of Texture Packer? That's great. It's awesome. Totally recommend that. And they do have a preset for Godot, and that's what one of my sprite sheets looked like. That was for the farm scene. So I import sprite sheets into Godot, and it was great. Does anybody in here not know why you'd use a sprite sheet versus a bunch of imported?
I'd love a description of that. Yeah.
Sure, it's really all about efficiency, you know, processor efficiency. So you have all these draw calls happening for every little thing that you import, all these little graphics, you know, it's having to do all kinds of math and, you know, all that stuff. If you just have it all on a sprite sheet, it has areas designated for those separate images, but they're all ganged up on one image. So it treats it as one image.
Nice.
So very nice. So then I would create node hierarchies for each channel. We're going to get into that soon. We're going to do sort of deep dive into Godot interface and node structure and stuff like that. I just need to position, size, rotate things, set an anchor point because I'm going to animate things. And these are all Sprite 2D nodes, by the way, and we'll get into nodes here in a sec. Add some hitboxes, add some sounds, create animations wherever they're needed. I need an idle state. I need a touch state. Sometimes I need more than one touch state. Because I wanted to build in surprises for the kids, you know, like not just you touch this animal one time and it does a thing. It's like, well, if you touch it 5 times, it does a special thing. So the kid starts to learn counting, right? They start to like associate things and start to think about numbers a little more. So like I said, I wanted to have some educational stuff in it, but not be academic, you know, just little things. And then you have to wire things up. You know, you're just adding necessary code, and signals is what Godot uses to start strapping things together. Then you rinse and repeat, and there you go. So we'll get nodes really quickly, and I'll hop over into Godot here in a sec. Are you guys interested in me like pulling up Godot and we can like poke around in Godot?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I'll pull up my scene and we'll poke around in it. But just really briefly, nodes are basically game objects like you'd have in Unity. But in Unity, a game object is just sort of a shell, right? And then you start dropping components on it, and that tells this thing what it's going to be. And then you have all these different tweaks you can make with it, and you can kind of make your own components that do different things and all that stuff. Well, instead of that, in Godot, you have different nodes for different things. So it's sort of like it's a node. A node is sort of like a game object with pre-structured components already in it, you know, and so it already has, it's basically a class. And so you have a bunch of different ones. Node 2D is the base 2D class, which I used a lot of. Every other 2D related node will inherit that. Area 2D for collision detection. Sprite obviously is a sprite. You drop that into your scene and you pick whatever sprite you want. Collision shapes, animation player for animations, audio stream player for certain types of audio. You've got particle generators. There's a 2D particle generator. There's obviously a 3D particle generator. Texture button. So let's hop over in Godot real quick, and we'll just poke around in one of my scenes, and and then we'll wrap that part of it up. So let's see, which one of these are we doing? That one, I think. In fact, let's go ahead. I'm going to hit play and I'm going to poke around this game, right? So we can kind of see where I ended up. I'm not going to show you everything, like, as we're going to get into parental gates here in a bit, and that's a whole thing. But like the two scenes I ended up having unlocked were the farm scene. I figure people search for farm, farm game toddler. You know what I mean? I'm thinking the whole time. I'm thinking about, well, what are people going to search for? What do parents search for when they're trying to find a game like this for kids? But here you go. So an example of some hidden things. What? Oh my God! I'm 3 and my mind was just blown because I found the cow. Are you kidding? I'm gonna turn this down. That's crazy loud. I know.
You turn it up.
Turn it up, man.
Oh, I've turned the TVs down. I turned them up.
Oh, really?
Just to make sure we have sound.
Oh, there we go. Wait, I got it. We're good. We're good.
Okay, you got it?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, I got like a little hidden something in here. What is it? A mouse? Yeah. Little chicken. I dig that animation. That's pretty cute, right? Very proud of that one. Little chick pops around. My little test that I did, I said I did a test in Unity and in Godot. And what I did was I basically did this pig, right? I did the exact same thing in both game engines. And then I looked back and thought, well, how did I feel making that one in that game engine versus that one? And I like Godot better. It just felt better to me, right? So it's a pig. And you got stuff like that. Now, what I really like is back here, of course, the clouds. You got to have something with the clouds, but this is cute. Remember, you're like 2 or 3 years old, right? And you go, wait, what? 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 Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh, right? So I had a lot of fun doing this sort of thing. And you'll notice that there's no background music, right? And that's intentional because, we're talking about kids. This is about like hearing what they're touching. I didn't want to have anything distracting them from it. There is some background, like ambient stuff, but I didn't want to. I've played some of these kids games where it's like this, but they've got like loud background music. I'm like, why would you do that? There's some fun stuff in here too, like, right? Wait. Yeah. So, I didn't mention that part of the reason I wanted to do this, when I talked about getting the itch to make a game, yeah, I was kind of hankering to make, work on a big project. But I also wanted my son to understand from a very early age what the design process is, and that everything he's going to interact with in his whole life has been designed by somebody, right? You can make stuff. I wanted him to understand that. So I brought him in very early to help make this game. That was part of the deal, part of the reason I did this. So we would reach points where I'm like, look, man, I know we need a starfish, right? He would help me decide what animals we need, right? So I get him involved. And we needed a starfish. Okay, well, what does a starfish do when you tap on it? I don't know. Starfish, they don't move fast at all, so it's not like it's really going to, wave at you, but I don't know, maybe it does, but he said, it may change its colors. Okay, all right. Like that? He's like, yeah, okay. How many colors should we do? I don't know. Just keep going, make more, So, all right, keep going. There we do. Just cycle around and come back. Okay, cool. And, this is the underwater scene. I'm like, I don't, you're not really going to have fish, like, making noises. I know it's a little odd, right? So I was like, I don't know what they're going to do. Some of it's just sound effects and stuff like that, but like, what? They got scared when I touched it. What? It's happy. It's okay. It trusts me now. That's pretty cute. And we got a little hidden eel in here. Wait. What? Right? That's me going, So a lot of times I'm actually making the noises on these things. Wait. Oh, look out, right? So anyway, lots of fun. That's kind of the gameplay loop, if you will, right? Let's get into looking at some of the structure. I'm going to try and make it so you can kind of see. I think what I want to do is pop into one of these scenes. I don't really want to get into the UI stuff. I just want to kind of show you how a scene's set up. Let's go into, we'll just pick something fun like, well, we can pick this one that we were just looking at, right? So you just have a little hierarchy for any particular animal, and like here's an oyster, that's dead simple, right? Not much going on there. But you can see that each of these little icons here, and I don't know if this is going to work out. If there you go, hey, check it out. Did that work? That did not work. Oh, now it's working. Okay. Dig it. Cool. So you see these little different icons. That's a different type of node. If I hover over it, it'll tell me what type it is. Okay. So this is a node 2D. Remember that's kind of a base node. These are all sprites underneath. Got an animation player, bubble particles. Everything's named kind of what it does. Collision shape. So that, if you'll remember, that's our hitbox basically, the collision shapes. And you can have preset collision shapes that are, a rectangle or a circle or whatever, or you can draw your own. It can be a polygon of some kind. So yeah, that's basically setting things up like that, and then you've got to animate them. So it's been a while since I opened up one of the animators. That's a, oh, that's a nested scene. That one. Okay. So yeah, you don't have with prefabs in Godot, but you can have a nested scene. It's basically like you build a scene. It's got animation. It can have a script inside of it. It can do whatever you want. But you can drop that into another scene, and you can use it like a million times if you want. It's basically a prefab. So let's see if I can get to an animation. It's been a while since I even animated something in Godot, but I like the animation area, and it's right there. It's easy to get to. There's a lot of stuff. There's our timeline. You can have lots of different tracks inside your animations. This only has one, really. It's pretty simple. But that's part of it. And then also like getting to the scripts, if it's Unity, I have to hop over into a different, like Visual Studio or whatever, but there it is, right? That's efficient to me. Like I don't like hopping into another app just to write a piece of code. And I think that's just hella tight. Fantastic. So what else we could look at in here right now? We're going to get back in here in a minute, but that's the basic structure. It's you've got a little hierarchy for each animal. You've got audio. Here's an audio. It's nothing to it. Pretty simple stuff. Let's get back over and continue on. So building a user interface in Godot is pretty easy. They've got nodes for everything, for alignment and for, of course, text blocks and things like that. But it was super duper easy. We could hop over in there and look a little bit. We could hop off into our main scene here, the main menu, and look at what we've got. There's these containers in here. Right, so you've got all these little vertical box containers, horizontal box containers, split containers, margin containers. They're like little containers for everything, right? There's a node for that, pretty much. I've got even one in the parental gate for a meter progress, right? Texture progress node. So that's you've got a progress meter of some kind going. It could be like a health bar or whatever. So yeah. There are nodes for everything. So up to this point, what was hard about that? I found that masking was kind of weird. That's when you have a shape and you don't, or an animation, maybe it's like a whole scene that's a nested scene, and you don't want the whole thing to show. You want part of it to be hidden, so you have to create a mask for it. It's a little weird in Godot setting that up, I thought. But when I think about masking, I think of Photoshop or Illustrator. In Godot, it's kind of like setting up a light source, which is weird. It's like you have to have a black and white a monochrome image, and you import that, and then you sort of apply it like a light source, and you have like 20 or so slots that could. See this Godot guy is like, what are you talking about? I can show you what I'm talking about, but it's I don't know. To me, it was like kind of weird setting it up, but it totally works. Changing fonts, oh man, like coming as an Adobe person, like if I want to change a typeface, it doesn't matter what app you're in. Like it's like, what does it take? Less than 5 seconds to change a font? But in Godot, it's like a whole thing. It does have a powerful system for creating themes, and that's a part of it, but didn't like that aspect of it. It's a little goofy. But now, I think in Unity it was a little awkward too, compared to like something like any other app on Earth. But I don't know. It felt weird. I ran into a weird issue where Windows Touch was registering differently than mobile devices. Like this, I was testing a lot on this, because this actually is a touch screen here, but I was finding out I have some of these little animals and objects will need like 3 touches or 5 touches to do a special hidden thing, and so I've got to have a counter, right, to count how many times this thing's been touched. Well, the Windows Touch was like counting as 2 touches every time, so I had to like have an extra conditional thing going on, and like it was a pain in the ass, but that was weird. I don't think that's a Godot issue necessarily. I'm not sure. It was just weird. But really, if I did all that much work up until now, and that's all I had to complain about, that ain't bad, right? And sure, I ran into problems along the way doing that, but nothing that stood out really. And this is the little video I put together. Right? Super cute, super cute. But that isn't the end of everything. That is the video I ended up making and using on the app stores. But we're not done building this game yet because it's in-app purchase time, right? And it's super important that I get that working. Otherwise, I made a game that's just free, and I didn't want that, because it's a lot of work and I want to get something out of it other than jollies. So I had to figure out, all right, what's it going to take to do in-app purchases in Godot? Well, Godot needs to access a couple of APIs. Got to have one for iOS and one for Google Play billing. And I actually, it's going to look, if I didn't have this line in here, it would look like I did all of this at the same time. I did, initially, I just did iOS. I did that because I did the research to see who was spending money, right? And it seemed like most of the countries I was planning on pushing this thing out to were spending their money in Apple products. And so why would I build for Android? I want to build for Android. I have an Android phone. I like Android, but I knew it was going to probably get complicated, so I went for Apple first. I'm going to need script to make and restore purchases. That's very important, because if you delete the game and then reinstall it, or you move to a different device, they need to be able to restore the things that you bought so that everything's unlocked again, or you get really nasty emails. So you got to have UI for doing both. We've got to be able to save user data, right? So that you don't have to query the store every time and see if has this person bought this or not, and then unlock it, because, well, what if they're not on the internet and the 3-year-old wants to play the game and starts throwing fit, right? We don't want that. So anyway, got to have a method to unlock everything and notify the user. Got to create an IAP item in the App Store. So how IAP works in Godot, It's going to run a singleton. It might be, depending on which platform we're talking about, it'll be the in-app store or the Google Play billing. Singleton will be running in the background. As of 2023, they're both plugins. And plugins with Godot, something I found, well, back up a little bit. Back when I was doing iOS, it was actually already integrated into Godot. That changed. I think, I can't remember which version where it changed, but they got out of that and started, it was modules and stuff like that. And then they changed and now it's plugins. So that's fine. We've got to query the store and look for the IAP SKU. When you set up an in-app purchase product, you're going to have a SKU number. Or it's not necessarily a number, it's whatever you want it to be. But it's got to be a unique string. So it's going to get the SKU info, which includes the price, and then you're going to be able to make purchases and deal with success or fail, maybe some edge cases. And we're dealing with non-consumable. There are different types of in-app purchases, consumables, non-consumables. So now we're getting into the area that I was really worried most about, which is like, I'm not a super programmer, right? That's not really my thing. I can do some scripting, and when I'm looking at it, I can get it. And I'm really, really great at taking snippets and modifying. I love that. Like, I can make it work from the ground up if I have to, but it's just going to take me longer. So I had back then a bit of difficulty trying to find sample code to work from. It was a bit hard to get IAP working because at the time I discovered that not a lot of people back then were putting out mobile games for iOS using Godot engine. Like, it wasn't a thing. Even though the docs say you can do it, I'm like going into forums, I'm going wherever I can, and I'm asking like, hey, where are my peeps? And like, I'm getting crickets, And then people will chime in and I was like, yeah, I guess not many people are doing that. Like, what? Okay, so this is going to be Sucksville. Yeah, like I said, I couldn't find a single tutorial on it. So I was like, wow, I really like, this is troubling, very troubling. I nearly gave up. I was so close to giving up. I was at my wit's end. And then I found this amazing thing. And it was, you find when you're doing Godot development, you end up on GitHub a lot. There's a lot of great, at this point, there's a ton of stuff out there. There's lots of tutorials. But back then, it was hard. But I did find this, and you can see it was, like the last time it was touched was back in October 15, 2020. This person was building an app and put together this lovely piece of script that, using conditional statements, basically looks to see what app store you're connected to, and whichever app store you're connected to, it will allow you to make an in-app purchase using that store, right? So it basically does both worlds, both. I like that. And from looking at the comments and stuff, it looked like things were basically working. So I got super happy, and I started playing with that code. And I had to break it down. It took me a while to like figure out what it was doing. And I'm like commenting the hell out of this thing. I'm like, hashtag, this is just Android, don't worry about this. And this, I'm like going through line by line, like what in the hell does this thing do? And I finally got through it and felt like I was, felt good enough to actually try it out, implement it. So yeah, creating an IAP product, if you've never made an in-app purchase product, is super easy. When you're on the App Store, of course, you set up your, let me see if I can get to this real quick. Not that. I'm going to hop into some of the dashboards once in a while here for like, this is App Store Connect. That's what you use if you're publishing to iOS. And if you're in here and you want to make a new in-app purchase, look at this, features, in-app purchase. Hey, look at that. I click this plus, boom, we are suddenly making a new in-app purchase. It's that Easy. So you would just tell it what kind, it's a consumable or non-consumable, give it a reference name, and you gotta give it a product ID. That's your SKU, that has to be unique in the universe.
What is the difference between, you keep bringing this up, what's the difference between the consumable and non-consumable?
Oh, okay, easy. It's like, the consumable will be like you're buying ammo. You know what I mean? Or you're buying something that you're gonna use in the game. Money, currency. Like you're gonna pay $10 of real money to get 100,000 coins, right? They're gonna go away eventually, and then you'll no longer have them, right? Versus a non-consumable, which is an in-app purchase that would be like for freemium, you know? So what I was gonna do is a non-consumable. It's something that it's one and it's there forever. You got it. It doesn't get used up. So anyway, we could hop over into Google Play, and if we look around, we would find pretty much the exact same thing. It's really simple to set up an in-app purchase from a storefront perspective, right? There's really not much to it. You just give it a name, tell it what it is. You have to have a description, of course, because at some point someone's going to see it and want to buy it, and you got to know what it is. But that's really all there is to it from the storefront perspective. A lot of the work is in your actual game. The way I was setting mine up, I didn't want it to be something where they pay for it and then they have to download and wait for it. So everything's already in this game. We're just unlocking it, right? So let's get into back where we were here. All right, so yeah, so we just looked at these guys. We don't really have to look at Google Play's console. I mean, it's the same thing. It's really the same process. There's not much to it. But the thing is, the SKU needs to be unique. You can't have anybody else on the store having something with the same SKU. So you want to be mindful, and you really, ideally, if you're going to be pushing to Android and iOS, you'd want your SKUs to match up. It might be useful to do that. So in order to do that, you need to look at the stipulations for those naming conventions. Like there are things you can do in one that you can't do in the other. You know what I mean? Now, I can't remember exactly what those things are, but I ran into it at some point. You got to save some user data so that when you fire this game up, it already knows whether it's been purchased or not, right? So Godot has a built-in helper class for that. This actually ended up being pretty easy. It wasn't hard, and I did find a tutorial on setting that up. And like, what do I need for this thing to do? Not much, really. I just need like a Boolean. Is this thing locked or not? Have they bought this thing or not? But then I was like, well, wait a second. What about languages? Am I gonna put together different languages for this thing? I'm not sure yet. If I'm going to do that, then we need it to save what language we're in. So there's the config file is great for that sort of thing, simple stuff like that. They have a whole different method if you're doing like save states within a game. Like you're on level 5 and you've got like X amount of ammo and your health is such and such and whatever. There's a different way of doing that. And again, their documentation is really good. They'll tell you all about it. And you can easily find tutorials on that sort of thing at this point. There's no reason to be afraid of not having documentation with Godot at this point, because there's tutorials for practically everything. UI, we may not spend that much time on this. I needed some buttons, obviously. So Godot, it has like these built-in button type things, and they don't look super great. I use texture buttons so I can make them look however I wanted to. Button nodes, texture button nodes. We talked a little bit about UI in Godot, and it's all node-based. Unity, I never liked doing UI in Unity, and it's been a while since I have done it, but back in the day, man, it sucked. I had some third-party thing that I used because, God, it was hard. Like, it was way harder than it should have been. In Godot, it wasn't so bad. Buttons need a home. What do I mean by that? I'm not even sure. I used a pop-up panel, that's it. Yeah, they have a certain node that's a pop-up panel, right? And it's got certain features, like it can overlay everything, like no matter what. And make it so it has another feature, it can make everything else on the screen untouchable while this thing is up. You know, it's got little features like that as a class. It's pretty cool. So parental gates is, you may not know what a parental gate is. Basically, it's a way to keep little kids from buying shit, right? The last thing in the world you want is like a 4-year-old getting in and buying stuff or leaving like crappy comments, you know? And by crappy comments, you know, I mean like illegible comments and like 1-star reviews, you know? So the thing is, like, they will absolutely reject your game if it's geared towards kids and it does not have a parental gate. And also, it doesn't. If you're not doing in-app purchases, you still have to have parental gate if you've got links that pull you out of the game and go to the internet where there's lots of scary stuff. So I've heard. Precisely. So, press hold. Oh, okay. Yeah, these are different types of parental gates. Like some would be like you press something and you got to hold it for X amount of time, and of course the kid they can't read, so they don't know that they're supposed to hold their finger on it, right? Dragging something and dropping it to a specific location. I've seen that one, and they'll make it so that the suggestions of what you're supposed to do are somewhat vague, just vague enough to where if you're a little kid, you're not going to understand what you're supposed to do, right? But anybody over the age of, you know, like 7 would get it. So let me show you what I did. I think I liked the parental gate I made. I was really, really pleased with it. So let me get that sucker open. Let's fire up this thing by going to the main menu and hitting play. Right? So I'm a little kid. I'm touching things. What? And I touch that, and I don't know what that is. And wait, hold. Oh. So there we go. Right? Super duper cute. There's our little menu. We can rate the app, but this will actually take you to the App Store. We're going to get into ratings in a bit and how to make it so it's a hell of a lot easier for people to rate your game. Because ideally, you don't ever have them leave your game to rate the game, right? And you don't really want to have to pull people out of your game. Got to restore purchases, right? Unlock all the scenes. This would pull up, if we were on an App Store, which we're not, it would pull up, it would query the store, all that stuff. Right now, it's just going to tell you it can't connect to the App Store. This, I'm not sure how I segue into the language thing, but I'll hold off on that for a minute. Anyway, that's my super kick-ass parental gate. Thank you. I'm done. Yes. Let's get back in here. All right, so yeah, developing the main menu. I knew that I wanted my scene thumbnails to be really enticing to a little kid. Like, ideally, they can see what these things are and think like dinosaurs, you know, and they tap on it, and then it cues them that it's locked, and the parent's like, oh, you can't get into that, honey. We have to buy that. And you go, do it, you know. And I got him, right? And it's a bonus if you can do it without sticking text on the screen because they can't read. It needs to be foolproof. This is, yeah, I probably lost a little sleep over this. I had some anxiety about this. My biggest nightmare was worrying that this was going to get approved by the App Store. It would be there, people would download it, and they would like it. Their kids want the upgrade, right? And so they buy it, and it either doesn't unlock, or like it unlocks until they close it, and then they open it again, and it's locked again, and then they start emailing me, and I'm like, oh shit. Like, I was really worried about that because the idea of people spending money and being angry at me, people all over the world, mind you, right? Did not like that idea. So I needed to make sure that that was super solid. I tested the hell out of that. So yeah, testing in-app purchases, that was kind of fun. Kept it really simple, like, but the first time that you run a test and the purchase like goes through and everything, it's so cool. Like, because we've all bought stuff with a mobile app, so you're used to seeing those little menus and buying stuff and everything. But when you're like on the flip side of it and you like see it working, it's like, oh man. What did I do? I needed conditional statements. That's how what I'm getting into here is like how I set things up for looking at whether or not the person has already bought this thing. They've got to purchase it, and when they go to purchase it, does it go through, or is it delayed? Sometimes there's edge cases here, but basically the whole point of the conditional statements was, is the purchase successful? Then we need to unlock the stuff, right? If it fails, we keep the shiz totally locked, right? So I needed functions for those things, and then I needed to make sure that this, whatever state it ended up in got saved to the user config, right? Now we could look around at the code for that real quick. Is anybody interested in looking at that, how that's set up really? I mean, it's a lot of code, but it's basically, you could kind of think about it for a minute and probably figure out what it needs to do. It's looking at what singleton's running in the background so that it knows which store you're connected to. Then it queries the store. It wants to see, one, what do you have in this store? Do we already have it? Are we making a purchase? Do you want to buy this thing? Pops up, right? They say yeah or no. If they say yeah, then it tries to go through the whole transaction process. And hopefully it's successful. And if it's not, then we end up back on our little menu, and we've got to have a notification saying that something happened and it didn't work, right?
I did have a question about that.
Yeah, sure.
You said it looks at which singleton is running.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make use of compilation directives, like somewhere in the singleton or within the code that's looking at the singleton? Like, is it compiling different code for iOS versus Android?
Yeah, I think I've got a slide in here somewhere that tells me let's look at the export stuff for Godot. But we're sitting here talking about it. It's basically when you want to set up your export, you go under an export menu, and you can add presets. I've got iOS and Android in here right now. If I go into, I think I ripped out, I don't know if I ripped out anything for this little sample thing, but that's where you would configure, just like in Unity, you've got like your player settings or something like that, and then you go in, you configure everything for whatever store you're dealing with. And this is where you would do that, right? I've got two plugins. I've got an in-app store plugin, and I've got a request review plugin, which we'll get into in a sec. See if you can see this. Oh, it's not doing the thing. Oh, that wrong button. There we go. So, right. So you've got all your different things in here that you'd see if you were in Unity. You've got like places where you configure your icons and all that stuff, and all the different bells and whistles that you might want with iOS. And most of them you can find in there. So yeah, and the same deal with Android, that's where you can tell it which SDKs you're targeting and all that stuff. And then when you're ready to actually export this thing, you're only going to export one at a time. And it's only going to use what it needs for that particular platform.
Makes sense.
Let's see, let's go back here. IAP testing, how does it work? Yeah, if you've never done this, basically when you might think about it like, well, I don't want to actually be charged every time I test an in-app purchase, right? So they have set up pretty well where you can, Google and Apple both do it fairly similarly. You add users in a particular area and they will not be charged for test purchases during beta testing, right? It's as simple as that. And in Apple, they're called sandbox users. And in Google Play, it's licensed testers, right? And this is interesting. Google Play billing has a handful of test card options. I find this kind of interesting. So it sort of gets into like edge case type stuff where, if I can find it, that's a few of them, but we want the little list of all of them. Here we go. Yeah, like it could be, you can test it as a slow test card that declines after a few minutes, right? Or it could always approve, instantaneously. Or it could approve after a few minutes, So fun little edge case type stuff. I don't remember actually really playing with those, but I thought it was pretty cool. Let's see what we got here. Hey, it's Snickers. Just a little Snickers break. That's all. Just a Snickers break. That's all. Let me get back into this. All right, so internationalization, right? That's a whole thing. But it was fun. It was interesting. How many languages do I want for this thing? Now the good news is like the only text in the game really that most people are ever going to see is the title, right? It's not like a text. You don't have like conversation. It's not a talky game. It's not like the start of Pikmin 4. Somebody knows. So please, come on, stop the talkie. Well, why not just do English and Spanish, right? Yeah, I could have just done English and Spanish. Okay. That would cover like Mexico and the United States. I'm like, well, what about South America? Covers a lot of South America. Cool. Wait, what about Brazil? All right. Portuguese. I know a little Portuguese. I like Portuguese. Brazilian Portuguese is like my favorite language. I'm all down with that. Gotta have Brazil. Gotta have Portuguese. Well, if we're gonna do that, like, well, what about French? Like, cause Canada, right? Okay, sure, yeah, that makes sense. I know a tiny bit of French. Sure. And then I'm like, it just snowballs. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I'm already gonna have to like deep dive into setting up languages in here. Like, let's go all out, right? So this is, at this point, what I was doing, it's not totally just willy-nilly here. I am actually searching online to find out who actually spends money, right? Because that's important. And so I picked the countries that spent the most money in iOS, because that's what I was building for at the time. That's really where this came from, but it was also one thing led to another. Like, okay, well, if I'm doing France, if I'm doing French, then I can put it out in France, right? Well, then why don't I do like, Germany and Italy, and I got Spanish because I'm doing Mexico, so I can do Spain, right? So like everything is like snowballing here. And South Korea, okay, I like Korean. I've had, Korean pals, so cool. And then India I threw in there. Why did I do that? I think it's because I was really curious about like what operating system is India into? That is a massive country full of tons of people. Surely they spend money on mobile games and stuff. They're all Android folks. And China, I can't remember the deal with China. But
For India, what language did you?
Hindi.
Hindi, okay.
Yeah. China, I've got some Chinese relatives, and so I figured I could get help there. And know plenty of Chinese Americans, so I was just like, I've got plenty of Chinese Americans in the United States. I will do that. I don't know if I'm going to release.
Question as well, regarding like regionalities, because you mentioned Portuguese, but there's differences between Portuguese, Brazil,
Yeah.
Mexican Spanish, Spanish
Yeah.
Spanish,
Yeah.
and Canadian French, and
Oh, yeah.
Francophone French.
Right. I wasn't going to go there. I wasn't going to go there. I figured I figured, you know what, it's, ballpark would be fine. Like, then I made the effort. I figured nobody's gonna like give me an angry phone call or an angry email, I don't think.
Maybe for like, for like Portuguese, for Brazilian Portuguese, but not French.
Yeah, I figured I would just roll with it, and, I'll pick one and we'll see what happens. And I may like,
You might upset someone in Montreal, but nobody cares.
right, that's kind of how I felt with it. It's like, okay, well, they can switch back to English if they're angry at it. You know what I mean? Yeah, I just rolled with it. So, how's it working Godot is really not as hard as you might think. So that was kind of interesting to set up. I don't know how you really do it in Unity. It may be really similar. But in Godot, you can set up for text, you can set up translation keys where basically you'll have this little text block that says something. And then you basically, in a CSV, you'll say every time you see this little keyword text block, then you need to look at what localization we're doing. And that's what you need to put in this area. You need to go and check the CSV, put it in here, right? And I'll show you what that looks like in a second, but
Did you actually declare the fonts for each one?
yeah, yeah. So this is a hot mess. It's this is what that CSV looks like. So we can zoom in a little bit to this, but basically what we're talking about is we've got like keywords on the left, and then each of these columns is a different locale, right? And the ones that look like gibberish, those are the ones that needed a special font. And that was interesting, trying to find these fonts that would work with this language properly, because also I don't know those languages, so I can look at them and think, well, that looks legit, I guess. I don't know, so you kind of have to like do some work there. And who's going to translate this stuff? I don't know all these languages. I'm a total dilettante with languages, man. I know a little bit of everything. So I decided it would be fun to set up a Fiverr crew, the dream team, and we're just randos, and that was fun. That was fun. Going around and looking, trying to scope out the right people for the right language. That was kind of entertaining. You want to get the most bang for your buck. You want them to look like they're legit and know what they're doing. It was pretty fun. And then I had to break down, well, what am I actually translating here, right? I know I don't have a lot of in-game text, but is there other stuff I need? And we need a title and button labels and those, the title thing, I don't know how it's going to work out. We'll find out. Notifications, the full version's unlocked. Buy this full version, make your toddler super happy, whatever. But then there's a store. Oh yeah, the store. I need descriptions, all that shiz, right? There's a lot there, and I'd never even thought about that. But when you're in the App Store and you're setting up your page, we're gonna go to the App Store real quick. I don't know which one. Let's pick one. All right, we're in Google Play. Cool. All right. Let's find our storefront. That's like, I think, way down here somewhere. Store presence, main store listing. Okay, and there we go. By the way, these stores, when you're setting up things in these app stores, it's all really similar stuff. They may call things something different, but it's the same stuff. So like right here, you've got a place where you put your full description, got a place for your short description, which is kind of like a subtitle. Of course, you've got your app name, and I don't know if I mentioned it, I don't think I mentioned it yet in the slides, but you're going to need keywords. You got to have a list of keywords, or otherwise people can't find the stuff, right? So if I go in here, I've got all the languages that I've selected, and it really does start adding up, especially when you're you get into Latin American Spanish, Spain Spanish, and everything. It adds up, but again, I'm using the same thing for both. And, then it's Chinese. Are you doing simplified Chinese? What are you doing? Because there's like flavors. So, you're going to need all that stuff. So I had to gather it. So I had to like think ahead, like, well, what keywords am I going to need? I only want to get these Fiverr folks to do this thing one time, right? I don't have to keep hitting them up. So I had to make like this big master list of what am I going to need. Then I also had to think about future stuff too. Like you see this update description here. Anytime you push an update, you got to say what the hell this update's doing, right? That's a part of the deal. So I had to think about what are some default updates I could do. Well, this app adds features, like this game adds new content, or new version complies with new iOS version. Like I had like a handful of things. I'm like, I'll get them to translate that, and I'll just keep copying and pasting that stuff over and over every time I push an update, and then it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's for little kids, right? So, let's see, where are we? Okay, we've looked at some of the storefronts, so we can spend a little more time in there if anybody wants to. Let's talk about ratings real quick. We're on our approach here, right? The plane's gonna land, I promise you. You can almost see Nashville in the distance if you look real hard, and we're banking.
What scene is that?
All right, so ratings are a huge deal. You find out once you've got your game on the app stores that, like, if you don't have any ratings, it gets buried, right? If you get velocity with ratings, it's even better. Like, people are like downloading it, there's velocity there, like more and more people are doing it, and it's like adding up, and they're also rating it, you're getting good ratings, all that stuff is important, and it raises you in the ranks when people are searching for it. So ratings are huge, and there are good ways to set up ratings inside of a game. The best way to do it, I think, is to use the APIs that Apple and Google have both released for their respective platforms. What they do is basically it makes it so that, and I'm laying it out here, I don't know why these aren't adding on, so all the suspense is gone now. You have all my bullets at once. It basically they can, it pops up and you can leave a rating real quick. You don't have to leave the game. Awesome. I think you can even leave a quick review without leaving the game. I don't know. I was really mostly interested in people clicking stars. So the only downside is they're going to decide how often it appears. You decide like where in your game it's going to come out, like. But as far as when, like on a timeline, that's up to Google and Apple. And Apple, I can't remember about Google, but with Apple, they only want this thing to show maybe 3 times a year tops. Right? They don't want people bombarded with, rate my game, rate my game. And they certainly don't want it to be like, oh, you finished the first level, what do you think about my game? Or like pop it up within the first 10 minutes of you playing the game. They want you to like, get deeper into it, and they'll get on to you if you don't set it up that way. But I got really lucky and I found plugins for Godot on GitHub for that. It was a real piece of cake to set those things up in Godot. I was worried because I was like, man, I was thinking in 2020 terms. I didn't implement that until just a couple of months ago, and I actually didn't push to Android until a couple of months ago. Like I think it was like August when I was setting that up. So I did iOS a couple of years ago, and it was hard because nobody was doing it. And then I did Android a couple of months ago, hell of a lot easier because lots of people are doing it. And then at the same time, I wanted to implement this in-app review API for the iOS version, which means I was going to have to build again for iOS. And in the process of doing that, I had to go through the plugin system and do it that way because before it was modules, yada, yada, yada. Long story short, everything is easier in Godot these days, and there are a hell of a lot of tutorials out for it. I see a whole lot of really nice people putting together a whole lot of material to help people learn how to use it. ASO, super important. Your keywords are really important. You only get so many characters that you can, put keywords in there for it, and also you want to have the keywords in different languages, right? Did I get into? I thought I had. I didn't talk about literal versus phonetic translations. That's super important, and the difference is like phonetic translations. And John helped me with this because the Japanese translation I got back for some of the stuff was phonetic translations. That means it sounds like what you're saying in English.
Animal sounds explode.
Exactly, right? And nobody's searching for that, and if you're Japanese and you're in Japan, you're not going to search for that because it doesn't make any sense to. You want to search for the literal translation, right? So it's a big thing. If you ever have to get translations done, make sure you remember that you want literal translations for search optimization, because phonetic's not going to get you anywhere. Some other things, setting the in-game language to the locale OS, yeah, because people have their locale set in their operating system, but they may want the game to be something different, so I set that up. And then special fonts, we mentioned that a little bit.
And the fact that you have that option, I think, is really great. Just as someone who's like a big fan of Japanese games, and like I don't want to change my phone's language, but I want to play like the game in Japanese. Like
Right.
I'm someone who changes that all the time.
Yeah, so I wanted that to be an option. If you go in here now, like you can change, I got a ton of them, right? I got it all, I got everything. That's Russian. I mean, that's crazy looking. Is that even real? What's this? There's Japanese Hangul, Korean, and there's Hindi. So yeah, the whole thing. So ASO. So yeah, Google and Apple. When you're in the App Store and you're searching for things, it is only scanning certain things on that particular product's store page. If you're in Apple, it will look at your, let's go with Google. With Google, it looks at a lot of things. It looks at your entire description, looks at the name of your app, your game. It looks at your subtitle, your short description. It looks at your keywords, and it looks at your entire big description too, right? That sounds great. If you're in Apple, it doesn't do that. It looks at the name of your game. It looks at your short description. It looks at the keywords. It does not look at your description, your long description. So you cannot pack a bunch of keywords in there thinking that it's going to raise you up in the ranks, right? Doesn't look at that at all. But what they do with Apple, it's kind of interesting, is they also look at your developer name, right? So, and that gets really funny because if I'm looking at competition on the App Store for my game, I'll see people have named their game company Toddler Game for Kids, because it's searchable, right? It's got search terms in there. That's not really the name of a company. I don't know. Why would you name your company that? But that's what they named it, right? So they're just trying to squeeze in extra search terms by changing the name of their company with Apple. Anyway, it's really weird. So the export modules, we looked at that a little bit earlier. It's a lot like Unity. One of the things that was really cool about Godot with Android, I don't know if you can do this in Unity, you tell me, but you don't have to leave the game engine to test, to push an SDK, what is it, APK? To push an APK to your device when you're testing on an Android device, like with Godot. You can push it directly to it. If you're hooked in by a USB, there's a way you can do that, and it'll actually run it, and then you can look at the console and see if errors are popping up, that sort of thing. Very cool. That was really fun. It's not as detailed as Logcat if you're doing Android development. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, that's where you see every process that's happening on your phone, and then you want to you have to like put in a search term if you just want to see the things that are related to your game. And I don't, you know, testing for iOS devices, you know, it's Xcode, and it works, it's great, it's fine. Porting to consoles, you know, a lot of people, if you're building a game, you want to know that you can push it to everything, right? That's one of the things people like about Unity. They've got a whole page set up. Let's see if this is going to load. They've got a whole page for that in their documentation about consoles. You know, they don't have consoles natively with Godot. If you want to push to something like, I mean, of course, you can do Switch. If it's on you want to push it to a PC or something like that, that's fine. But if you want to do a console, you're probably going to have to hire some help, right? And I looked at some of these, and some of them, I don't even know if they're really doing this, you know. Some of them are definitely doing this. Lone Wolf, they look pretty legit. I think Pineapple does too. But the thing is, you know, if you're trying to push to the Switch, you're probably not going to be pushing to the Switch, whether you're on Unity or whatever, because it's hard to get in as a Nintendo developer. You know, they want to see your backstory. They want to see what have you made. Like, you should already be established, or they're not going to let you in. You know, it's so you're probably going to end up, if you're a Unity dev, going with some third party anyway. You know, I can't speak for PlayStation or Xbox, but yeah, Nintendo's pretty strict. But it's doable. I think everything's doable. What else we got here? Final thoughts about Godot. We're so landing the plane. What?
Something about porting to consoles, I have to just double check with my own group. There is another company started by the people who actually originally made Godot. It was like W4 Games or whatever.
Yeah.
They're a separate publishing thing that is offering like for the community, for like small people, they will port your game to Xbox, PS, PlayStation, Switch and stuff, because they'll have access to like the development kits and everything to get that all done for you instead of getting it yourself.
Yeah.
I know that's something being set up right now, and that's where it's fully out.
Yeah, I feel like I saw a little blip about that not long ago. But yeah, that rings a bell. That's very cool. Yeah, they're very cool. So yeah, I've got to watch the engine evolve over a couple of years, and you know, it's really cool because it's just gotten better. You know, I haven't seen anything that red flagged like, wow, this is going to tank. It's all been good, and the community is pretty solid. It's grown. People are friendly. What can I say? You know, it's all been good. I think we're all lucky to have it. It's an awesome engine. I think people should give it a try. I wouldn't be afraid. I mean, hell, it's not even, was it a 50 megabyte download or something to try it out. There's nothing to it. So give it a go if you're going to build something, and take a tutorial or two and see if you like the way it works. Just go for it. So a couple of GitHub users, this Heavy Poly person and a Nithar. These guys had some code that really helped me out, especially with the in-app purchases. John helped out with the translation. You know, like I said, I had stuff that was all like phonetic translations with Japanese, and that wasn't going to work, and he fixed it. There's a guy, this guy's awesome. He goes by Fine Point CGI, and he's got a bunch of really fantastic tutorials on Godot on his website. And that's where I got the plugin for Google Play Billing. My son Fox, he had all these great ideas during the course of this thing, and now he gets money, you know, from this game. And, you know, that's one I wanted to teach him. You know, you work on something, you can get paid for it. And speaking of money, here's a bunch of free. Look under your seats, everyone. I consider this little game a success. I get about, from Apple, I average, it's never lower than $50 a month. I mean, it's not a lot of money. It pays my internet service, and that's awesome. And yeah, totally. That's a lot of tacos, right? But the thing that I find really interesting is that it's stable. it's like super solid. You know, a lot of games, you make a game and it's like, well, it's launch day. This is the biggest day we're ever gonna have, and you know, everything's gonna suck afterward, right? It was like nothing like that with this type of game, because it's so niche, and the babies keep coming. It's not like you know, typical game where you put it out and then 2 years later it's like, oh man, that's like ancient. Nobody plays that anymore, right? Well, toddlers aren't like that. It's an awesome market. It's a great market. I'm telling you, it's great because they, you know, they're not gonna thumb their nose up at something. It's like, oh yeah, you're doing like, it looks like it's 16-bit, but it's not even right. You know what I mean? It's like they're not like snotty about anything. It's just as long as it's cute and it's fun, they're super happy, and they keep going. They, you know, some of them grow up, and then other ones take their place, and it's like it's super duper steady. So I've been real happy with it. I do give my son Fox, I give him a cut of money. He's, you know, I've got like, I sock a little bit away. You know, we've worked out a deal. You know, he gets a certain amount. There's a cap. I mean, I'm not going to go crazy with it, you know, if the game suddenly explodes and goes Flappy Bird on us. Anyway, it's been really fun. So I think that's it. While we're standing here, if you want to ask any more questions, please feel free to do so. I'm going to leave this running just for a bit. This is a current reel for Godot. I'll leave the sound down though. Does anybody have any questions? Like, what's up?
So the in-app purchases, the having everything in the game unlocked through the files and whatnot, have you thought about, and what is the complexity of doing like pay for DLC?
I haven't had to do that, so I don't really know for sure, but from what I've seen, it doesn't look hard. You know, it really doesn't. It's, from what it,
So like your game blows up and you get popular enough to get like a signed IP, like if you wanted a Star Wars scene or a Star Trek scene or something, how would you incorporate that?
if I needed to incorporate that, I would probably just make it a part of the full build and just push it as an update, and it would be locked for people who don't have it. You know what I mean? Because the files are small anyway.
Right.
You know. Or I could take it easy, man. Thanks for coming.
I got 3-year-old daughter, I'm gonna go home and get a game for it.
You should go for it. Get her help. You know, get her help definitely. So yeah, I don't think it's that hard. You know, download DLC stuff is just, you know, it's just a file and you upload it and you set it up like an IP, and I think it's really all about coding what happens inside the game when you pull it down. You know, how does it actually integrate itself? You know.
Because right now your game is really small, but if you get to like a Diablo world where you're like 20 gigs.
That's the plan.
So the pay for DLC packages would keep your download smaller for your initial game and
Yeah.
download incrementally.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. It's small enough where I don't really worry about it. You know, this sort of thing. Currently, yeah.
What is the file size on
The file size, I can't remember. It's like, shoot, I can't remember offhand.
I mean,
Sorry.
It's below 100.
It's definitely below 100. You know, it's not 100. It's more like, it's like the size of Godot if you download Godot. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's all like you got images and you got audio, right? You can only compress that stuff so much, and that's really the bulk of it. But yeah, Godot's come a long way, and people are making some really cool stuff. I'd like to make it. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a question like the time breakdown. How much time did you spend on making the game versus internationalization is another big section versus ID?
Okay, let me think. I know at one point I was like, as far as just the game parts itself, the scenes, I was like, I can crank out one a month. And of course, I've got a full-time job, and I've got a toddler. You know what I mean? It's like, I got stuff going on. So I'm trying to find nooks and crannies of time to work on this thing. So it's kind of hard to completely quantify. But I know at one point I could crank out a scene every month if I stayed really focused. I just couldn't stay really focused. I had too much going on. As far as the internationalization, I had that done within a couple of weeks, you know. And again, it's not an 8-hour job, me working on this game. If it was, it'd probably be a couple of days, you know. I would be waiting on the Fiverr people, you know. And in the meantime, I'd be setting things up so I could very quickly implement it once I had the translations. You know, it wouldn't take super long. IAP took a while because I didn't know what in the hell I was doing, you know, and I couldn't find, it was really hard to find help. I almost hired somebody at one point, I think it was that one of those guys I thanked because I'd seen some code, and he was pretty involved on GitHub with Godot related stuff, seemed to know a lot about IAP for iOS back then, and communicated with him a bit. But around that time, I found this big chunk of code that worked really well with just some tweaks, and so I moved on. But it's really hard to quantify about how much time I put into IAP because of this expanse of not knowing what I'm doing and trying to find help, you know, and not like being focused and actually working on it, you know.
Well, can I ask you, if you were going to be talking to somebody who's making a game, would you say plan on, maybe not going to make the same game, would you say how much time do you estimate would that take? It seemed very involved for the last one. Is it a lot of time, or do you think it was already?
I think that you could do something like that in a couple of months, you know. You could have the basic framework of it in a couple of days, you know. Like just to have some scenes and a main menu and get to these scenes, you could do that in maybe 2 hours, you know what I mean? But to actually fill it with the artwork and have things that make sense inside of there and have fun little things and you know, that takes time. Some of them were easy, and some of them weren't easy, you know. Like sometimes I didn't know what to do with a certain animal. And my kid would always come up with a good idea. But you know, coming up with things for different animals to do and having little things that are surprises, things that are funny, that stuff, it takes a bit of time. So, anybody missed it? All right, so, you know, you gotta have fun stuff. That's my kid, right? We did multiple takes and then, right, so that was like a Lion Guard reference from many years back then. It was popular, right? That was Simba's kid, you know, everybody knew. So yeah.
How did you figure out the sounds of dinosaur make?
That's a good question. I mean, Jurassic Park, I guess, you know, like, what did I do with the dinosaur sounds? Some of them I think I made the noises, you know, and just kind of did some modulation and stuff. I can't quite remember.
Can you give an example of one of the noises?
Right? I can't. We'll get in here. Save me. Like Parasaurolophus, you know, it's got this long thing in its head, and it's thought that it used to make a sort of noise, like a hoot type noise maybe, because it's like an echo chamber inside of there, so, right? Again, you know, we do I don't know what the Stegosaurus does other than swing its tail, but we made it, right? That's me, right? And of course, everybody loves Triceratops, and it's a vegetarian. See, we're learning, right? That's why it has a bowl of salad in front. This is Elasmosaurus, and then you find out, what? Hey, cool. What? What are you doing there? That's cool. Hey, and then pops back up. I had a good time making loops like that, you know, coming up with things like that was really fun. And hey, we could have a little particle generator going on. Uh-oh, look out, right? So fun stuff like that. Oh, one more, this is cute. Wait. Little tiny arms, right? So, yeah, lots of fun. Any other questions?
I mean, I could ask several. But,
I mean, go for it.
so like when I released my game in 2016, you were saying that like if someone doesn't have to be connected online to check if the purchase is unlocked, that you can like do it locally within that.
You gotta have a save file. You
Yeah.
know, yeah.
I guess when I made my game back in like 2016, there was a concern because you're using that like SKU, that unique string.
Yeah.
That could be hacked unless you encrypted it. So the program I was working with, we had like a $10 Unity plugin to like encrypt that string. Did you do anything like that?
It's such the file, like, you're not gonna be able to get to the file. You know, I looked into that a bit, like to see what are the chances that someone could actually like, one, give a shit. You know what I mean? Like this is a kid's game, and then you can buy it for $4. You know what I mean? Like, but no, really, it was like, it's looking into it. I felt pretty confident nobody's going to get to it. You know what I mean? I can't remember exactly what the deal is, but it's not a file that's sitting out in a folder that you can get to. It's internal, basically. If that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's not something that you're ever going to see. If you really wanted to get to, maybe, I don't know. But that's a lot of work to go through when you can just like pay $4.
Yeah.
So
I guess I was surprised because like finding my app on the website, like freeapk.com.
oh really?
It's like, who am I? Like, who are you to like
Yeah.
find my app that I just made by
Right.
myself and like pirate it? But,
Yeah.
Yeah, you could have checked like once a week or something like that, and just download the game, sign one, and say like, okay, after the week's expired, you'll have to check storage in and have it constantly update. And
yeah.
that way, as long as they have a connection once a week.
Yeah.
Is there a way to cross-reference the actual user's store purchases? I mean, the store keeps up.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because when I gave a talk about my game, that's what Justin, someone else in the group, was saying. Like, you should have done that. You should have just like pinged the store to make sure they had purchased it. But like you point out, maybe they don't have reception. or
Yeah,
something.
they might not. You know, and yeah, it does that, and it does that.
But you could do that with a timer, though, so check once a year or something.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, like lots of options. You know, it depends on how far you want to go, how secure you want to make it. I mean, if it were something that I felt like was going to get in the hands of like actual like hardcore gamers and people who can actually code and stuff like that and might want to actually crack it, then I'd get into all that. But like, you know, for the parents and grandparents and stuff like that, sitting with a 3-year-old, nah, they're not gonna try and hack this thing.
The kids are more likely to hack it than the parents.
It might be. They might be. And, you know, the Android version I put out in, I guess it was early August, something like that, late August? Can't remember, but anyway. I'm getting maybe $10 a month off of that so far. You know, it's, and again, it's fairly steady. Not that, I mean, it's $10, but I think it'll grow over time, maybe. And I can certainly do some work on App Store optimization. You know, I did run a little ad campaign just for the hell of it. No, this is another nice tip, Corey. I'm looking at you. You put out a game on Apple's App Store, you get $100 worth of free advertising in the App Store. And that's really cool. And I used that. I mean, didn't use all of it. I used like $60 worth of it just for kicks and set up an ad campaign. I did search result ads, you know, so when someone searched for relative terms, it would pop up in the upper left corner, you know, and like as a sponsors ad, and it did pretty good. It was really interesting to see almost in real time how well the keywords I chose were working or not working. That was really interesting. But of course, this type of game and this pricing and the amount of people you're actually going to get to buy it doesn't make sense to advertise for it. You know, it's not that. That's another thing about this kind of game. When I first started talking about what did I learn from that memory match game, and I was talking about monetization and marketing and how, like, you know, really, if you want to make money with this thing, it needs to be like this or it needs to be like this, right? Well, this type of game that I did is very niche. So it gets a steady stream of parents and grandparents and whatnot looking for games for toddlers that are animal related, right? It is not the kind of game I would advertise really outside of a search ad. You know, I'm not gonna like buy Facebook ads for it and try and get everybody to come oh man, share this because it's, oh my God. It's like the most amazing thing. You know, if it were hilarious, you know, like maybe just the rhino pooping over and over again, maybe that would get something, I don't know. But yeah, it's not the kind of game that you advertise that way.
I don't know, buying a YouTube ad just has a random pooping and just showing them everyone's video sounds like a really good help.
It might work, you know, I hadn't thought about that until just now.
I got one more.
Yeah.
What is the conversion rate, if you don't mind?
Conversion rate for iOS is certainly higher than Google. I think it's probably, it's like 8% maybe for iOS. It's really not bad.
That's pretty
You know,
good.
yeah, it's pretty good. And that was my hope, was that the kids would see these thumbnails and, you know, they're having a pretty good time. They get a couple of laughs and they see these thumbnails and they want to poke on them, and the parents are like, it's a couple of bucks, you know? Because like I said, I did that so many times, that my hope was that it would be like that. And I think it worked out pretty well because it's steady, you know? I don't see it going away, you know? That's the cool thing. It's not like tens of thousands of dollars. I'm not going to retire on this thing, but I can't really complain too much. It did what I wanted it to do.
How did you land on the pricing for your content?
I just kind of went by what I used to spend on those similar types of games, what felt like right, you know. And some of that has to do with the amount of time that I felt that they would spend playing it, you know. Is that sort of thing, and the quality of it, whether the interaction is good and the artwork's decent, sounds are fun. I felt like it was, yeah, it was about right. I think it's, what is it, $3.99? It's like $3.99 or $4.99, I can't remember. But I wanted it to be fairly cheap, and not too cheap.
What would you say you did to differentiate yourself from those competitor games that you were?
I thought the artwork and just overall design was a step up. Yeah, that's pretty much it, you know, because they're in the same ballpark, you know. I wanted to make sure the interface was like really tailored to like a 3-year-old and what they can handle, and that they can get in and out of these scenes without a problem, you know, and just go back and forth and play. And some of the other ones weren't quite as well done, you know. I found some that were basically the same thing. I mean, the good thing is now I basically have a structure. I can make more of these types of games. I've got, you know, scene structure. I've got in-app purchase code that works, and I know it works. So I can make more kids games, you know, if they're like scene-based. I've got that set up in Godot now, and you even have like the in-app review stuff set up. So that's a good thing.
Speaking of that, what is the future of Wowium games? What's your next projects?
I don't know, man. I was thinking about, before the Unity thing blew up, I kind of wanted to make a vertical version of a matching game, you know, and make it more like a brain game, kind of, you know, brain training for old people or, you know, middle-aged people kind of focused, or maybe you could do skins with it as IAP, that sort of thing. But I don't know. I don't know if I want to build for Unity anymore. I might rebuild something like that in Godot. I don't feel like making another iPad, like tablet game. I think the next game I work on is probably going to be just a vertical phone, something you could do with, you know, a thumb. You know what I mean? And hopefully something like that's really funny. You know, I think something hilarious, like, I don't know, like the Untitled Goose Game type, stupid, you know, something that's like really shareable, like, oh my God, kind of funny.
Is it on VR order?
Maybe, you know, I've got VR ideas, man. I've got I got, I fill up my Google Keep notes with all kinds of ideas. I got some VR ideas, and I thought about doing that.
Pterodactyl was scary, man.
Yeah. But yeah, I've got a few ideas. I don't know exactly what to focus on right now, but that's. I'd like to do some more. I'd like to do some more kids games, probably. I think it would be really nice to have a half dozen to a dozen kids games that are all high quality and have some kind of cute thing that ties them all together. There's a number of competitors to my sort of game that are like that, and I'm super envious, because they'll have, but then I look them up and they've got like, I don't know, 1,000 people working for them. And like, okay, well, whatever. It's like, okay. Current downloads?
Yeah.
iOS, maybe about like 10 downloads a day, something like that. So yeah.
I would strongly encourage you to keep making these and maybe buy some search ads, because 8% conversion is extremely high. I have never seen that.
It was pretty good. Well, the conversion for the ads, that's a little different, that wasn't directly ads, that's just like in general. I get pretty good conversion. It takes time though, because it's freemium, so they're gonna like wear out those 2 scenes, and then they want to play some more. But yeah, it's pretty good. That's the thing. I am gonna put more time into figuring out how I can make that $50 a month go up a little bit, just because. My keywords look pretty good though right now. It's another thing I did mention. Like, there are lots of tools for figuring out which keywords are the best to use, which keywords your competitors are using. Sometimes you can find free tools that'll do that. There's something that used to be called App Annie, and now it's like data.io or something like that. And I use that. I get an email from them every day telling me how many people downloaded, how many people bought. And I can go in there and I can look and see, I can plug in a competitor and see what people are searching for to get that, and that sort of thing. It's very helpful. So yeah, I like the idea of, like I said, I'd love to have like a little portfolio of kids games all falling under like one hat, and quality stuff. But my kid's also older now, and he was kind of inspiring at the time, and I was just immersed in all these games, seeing a lot of that stuff. So I don't see as much of it anymore, and he's playing, Tears of the Kingdom, so I'm not going to make that.
Yeah.
Not yet. But one of these guys, I mentioned some of the competitors, the inspiration up here earlier. One of these guys, just an indie dev, I think he's in Germany. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I checked out his website today, and he's really come a long way since this little game that inspired this one. Here he goes. Winterworks. Goes by the name Winterworks. Oh, that's the App Store thing. I want to go to his actual website. I wonder if I can do that. Oh, there we go. He's got a nice little portfolio now, and these games are on the Switch. He's got his goofy little, where is it? The game that started it all, Animals for Toddlers. This is on the Switch, right? And no, it's not a cartridge. You can't buy a physical copy. I know you wanted one, but I just saw that today. I'm like, damn it.
Say he's European.
Huh?
Say he's European.
I think he's German.
Yeah, I've heard that it's easier to
Or-
switch through Nintendo of Europe.
Hmm.
Like they have lower standards.
Maybe,
than
yeah.
Nintendo of America.
Yeah,
If you
could
have
be.
an account and a Unity account, you can bring it.
I'm sorry, what was that?
If you have an account and a Unity license, it's pretty much turnkey for that.
Hmm. He's got this cool game, where is it? One of his, I think it might have been his second game, the Sir Tin Can. This is awesome. I really like this one. It's a whole series of activities you can do as this character inside of this whole little castle world and everything. It's really super cute. I was very impressed with that. Anyway.
Yeah, that's on Switch. It's $7.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Probably killing it.
Well, I mean, people look for games. People, I'm telling you, man, parents look for games for their toddler. It could be a 2-year-old, you know, and you're like, you just get curious. Like, is there anything out there that this kid could do on this device that, you know, would work?
You can print money on the Switch, that's why it's better.
So yeah. Anyway. All right. Well, that's pretty much all I got. Does anybody have any other questions, or wrap it up? Tell you about leopard geckos. Tell you all day long, man. They're awesome. I got one that's hungry right now. What time is it? 8:30. Yeah, it's wandering around this terrarium right now. I know where I'm at.
Yeah, we got about until 9 o'clock,
Mm.
so